Welcome back to Kelly's Take 2 Pre-Licensing Review. So glad to have you back today. We left off talking about part 1 of Unit 2, which was all about the legal bundle of rights. And now we're going to build on that and dive into Section 2 of Unit 2, which discusses the difference between real property, personal property, and what's considered a fixture. So if you are listening to this review session while you're out doing your chores or walking or exercising and so forth, and you just carry on, remember you can always speed up the recording if you want to hear this a little bit faster. If you happen to be taking notes with me as we are reviewing, go ahead and grab a piece of paper and we're going to draw a graphic organizer. So get ready for that. Okay, here we go. So we're going to draw a 3-column, well, maybe 4-column graphic organizer. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got my little notes over here off to the side as well. So let's see if I don't know how neat this is going to be, you guys. We'll see. Okay, that's not bad. Okay, and one more line. Oh, that could be better, but it is what it is. Okay, we'll draw a little line across here. Excuse me. Up here, I'm going to put prop just to save space. So real property, personal property, and the other column, you can title that fixture. Okay. Then off to the side over here, let's write, we're going to talk about 3 different situations. The first one we're going to talk about is in regards to vegetation or plants. Are plants real property, personal property? Are they a fixture? Probably not. But sometimes plants can be real property, sometimes they can be personal property, and we're going to try to suss that out in just a minute. Okay, then we're going to talk about manufactured homes. Then we're going to talk about trade fixtures in commercial lease agreements. But let's start with plants just because I don't want to run out of room right out of the gate. So we're going to start with plants. Plants are considered real property when, this is an easy way to remember it. If you've got roots in the ground, that's very messy, but you get where I'm going with that. If you've got roots in the ground, then plants are considered real property. And I doubt you're going to see this on the test, but they're called fruits of nature. Fruits of nature. You got some roots in the ground. Plants will be real property. You got some roots in the ground. Real property. You got some roots. The plants are real property. You know, everything can be a song in my world. All right, what are some examples of fruits of the nature? Things like grass, flowers that are planted in a garden bed. So flowers in the garden, the roots are in the ground. Here's my favorite, all my Monty Python fans, the shrubbery. Shrubbery would be considered fruits of nature, real property. What do we know about real property? Those items are pertinent to the property. They stick to the property. They will transfer with the property when the land sells or is gifted, so on and so forth. So fruits of nature. When might plants be considered personal property? All right, let's go over here. Plants are going to be considered personal property if they are an annual crop. And if it's an annual crop, we call that fruits of industry. Okay. I know they put the Latin version in your book. It appears as if we're moving away from using that terminology. Okay, so I'm going to use the regular people speak, fruits of nature, fruits of industry. So annual crops are considered personal property. Okay, very good. And other words for personal property would be things like emblements when it comes to plants. So crops might also be called emblements. But as a side note, personal property may also be called chattel. That's a loaded word. Or personalty. Just FYI, just a heads up about that. Okay, so when it comes to plants that are an annual crop, if we have a tenant farmer and the property is sold by the owner of the farm, then the tenant farmer has a right to go back and harvest those crops. That just makes sense. Really, in a nutshell, a tenant has the right to their stuff pretty much no matter what. There is one exception in North Carolina, but I would write down tenants keep their stuff. As a general rule, I'll say it again, tenants keep their stuff. So in this case, again, if you've got someone who's renting farmland, which is a thing, people do that, and the farm is going to be sold, that tenant farmer has a right to go back and harvest their annual crop. It's considered personal property. Otherwise, if the owner of the property, owner of the farm is actually farming it, then unless they've made a special provision in the sales contract, generally the harvest will transfer to the new owner. Just, a side note. Okay, very good. Anything else I want to tell you about that? Nope, looking good. All right, let me rearrange my board so I have more space to work with y'all. Very good. Okay, so we talked about plants. Now let's talk about manufactured homes. So number 2, we're going to talk about manufactured homes. Manufactured. Very good. That's a new way to say what? Trailer. That's a new way to say what? Mobile home. But no, they changed it. Now it's called manufactured home. And guess what a modular building is called? A manufactured building. Who knew? All right, so a manufactured home is going to be considered personal property. Normally. Why? Because normally it has a VIN number. All right. Now, if you want it to be called real property, we must do a few things. In order for a manufactured home to be considered real property, we must extinguish or get rid of the VIN number. So we'll put VIN number and put an X through it. VIN number, and we'll X it out. So we got to get rid of the VIN number. We need a permanent foundation. I'm going to put permanent foundation, and a few other items that you need to get rid of. You're not going to be tested on what it takes to turn a manufactured home into real property, but you do need to know that when it's delivered, when a manufactured home is delivered to a vacant parcel of land, it's going to have a VIN number. It's going to be considered personal property. And until the owner gets rid of the VIN number, extinguishes it with the DMV, and puts the mobile home on a permanent foundation and one or two other little items, only then will it be considered real property. Very good. Now, conversely, a manufactured building, which is a modular home, hold on, let me write that down. Manufactured building, which we know as a modular, is considered real property right out of the gate. So it's real property upon delivery. Why? Because it's going to be put together on site. It's going to be inspected by the building inspectors, just like a regular stick-built house. So it's considered real property as soon as the parts and pieces are delivered to the site. Good. All right, number 3 we're going to talk about today will be trade fixtures. You're thinking to yourself, why are we talking about trade fixtures already, Kelly? We haven't even talked about a fixture. I know, we're going to get there. Don't worry. Let me draw some lines here, y'all, so we can keep ourselves straight. We'll do blue, I suppose. Okay, we'll draw a line across here. All right, very good. Let's talk about trade fixtures. Trade fixtures are going to be considered personal property 9 times out of 10. Personal property. Why? Because tenants get to keep their stuff. Generally, tenants keep their stuff. That's just a good way to remember that. So trade fixtures are involved in commercial leases. For instance, if you have someone who is leasing space to put together a bakery and they've got special equipment for baking the bread and mixing the flour and so on and so forth, when that tenant moves out, they get to take all of their bakery equipment with them. Okay, those are called trade fixtures. Again, tenants, as a general rule, get to keep their stuff. There is one North Carolina exception over here, and I'll put in red, NC exception. I give this a very low probability of showing up on the state licensing exam. But like I've told you before, everything in that 800-page book is fair game. So I'm going to let you know what it is. The North Carolina exception to this rule is regarding agricultural fixtures. Agricultural items. Agricultural items are going to be considered real property, so equals real property, meaning what? Unless that tenant farmer puts together a special agreement and the owner of the land agrees to it, if that tenant farmer in the state of North Carolina installs any type of farming equipment, that farming equipment in the state of North Carolina stays with the property when the tenant leaves, either leaves the lease or so on or so forth. I don't know why or how that rule came into being. I'm quite interested, believe it or not, in knowing the basis for that exception, but currently we just have to memorize it. That's the exception there when it comes to trade fixtures. All right, let's go over here now and talk about fixtures. First of all, what is a fixture? A fixture, by definition, is we've got some personal property that is now affixed to the real estate. And because it is affixed or attached to the real estate in a substantive sort of way, in a permanent sort of way, it's going to be considered a fixture. So let's go ahead and write that definition down. So a fixture defined as an item that was personal property but has been, let's say, strongly attached to the realty. What do I mean by strongly attached? Think of words like glued, screwed, bolted, installed, wired. All of those types of words will indicate that an item is now a fixture because it is affixed or attached to the realty. Some examples would be a ceiling fan. You've got to wire that in. Plumbing, you've got to, what's the word for that? You've got to install it. You've got to install the plumbing. Let's see, what else would be? Kitchen sink, a mailbox. Let's see, a shed that has a permanent foundation. A basketball goal that has a permanent cemented in the ground foundation. Those would all be considered fixtures. Fixtures are going to transfer automatically with the sale of the property. Okay, very good. Again, anything that's glued, screwed, bolted, installed, attached, wired, those are all words indicating that something is a fixture. Now, if there is a fight about a fixture, so if there's a fight between the parties, whether or not, hey, is this a fixture or not, they're going to go see Judge Judy. You know how much I love Judge Judy. And Judge Judy is going to do something called the total circumstance test. And the acronym for that is IRMA. So Judge Judy is going to look at the intention of the seller, and the seller is the one that affixed the item to the realty. When another word for affixing would be annexing. So you might see this term annexor, which is weird. We never talk like that, but there you are. The annexor would be the owner of the property or the seller of the property. So did the seller or the owner or the annexor, see how I can use all three of those words, was it their intention to create a fixture? Or did they intend to just simply take that item off the wall and move it with them? So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the relationship between the parties. This one is getting at, do we have a tenant? So if the person living in the house, the annexor, is the tenant or the rentor, guess what? Like I said a minute ago, tenants keep their stuff. So even if something looks as if it's been installed, that tenant can uninstall it and take said item with them. Because why? Tenants, as a general rule, get to keep their stuff. All right. The M stands for method. Was it glued, screwed, bolted, wired, installed, or whatnot, plumbed, etc.? So if the method indicates that the item appears to be a fixture, it's permanently affixed, then it probably is. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Okay. All right. And the last one, last but not least, is the A stands for adaptation. Adaptation. There we go. Okay. Has said item been adapted to suit that particular piece of real estate? This one is a little more obtuse. So let me give you some examples. Examples would be the garage door control. Garage door control. Is that what you call it? The little button that you press, the remote control, essentially, for the garage door. That would be a fixture. It's part of the overall system. So that's another way to think of adaptation is, are we talking about a system and each part is designed to work with the other parts? And the garage door controller certainly is designed to work with that particular home, that particular garage door. Another one would be, this one's one of my favorites. So another example would be the dog collar for an invisible fence. So if you have an invisible fencing system, the dog collar has been coded, I suspect, I don't know how it works exactly, to work with that particular fencing system. So invisible fence, okay. And last but not least, this one, oh, this one is so tricky. It got me. I'm not going to lie to you, it did. It got me. How about a house key? Would a house key be a fixture? Yes, it would. A house key would be considered a fixture. Why? Because that key has been adapted to fit that particular handset for that particular house. Interesting. All right. So I believe that is going to conclude our review on real property versus personal property versus fixtures. That's section 2 out of unit 2. There are 5 sections total in unit 2 that we need to review together. So join me in just a minute for section 3. Section 3 is going to be on estates in real property. Fun stuff there, y'all. I know you're on the edge of your seat and can't wait. Okay, I'll see you in a few minutes.